All right, so on to the next project. We have a 2019 Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. It's the 144 with the diesel and four-wheel drive. So pretty cool. This is actually my personal van. And we've gotten some work done on it. We hit the pause button to get our first client's van done. But now we're picking this one back up. And so I'll run you through what we've gotten accomplished so far, and we'll go from there. So to start out with, we have Aluminess running boards on the bottom. And I really like those. These Sprinters, especially the four-wheel drives, are pretty dang tall. And this is almost an absolute requirement to get in and out of the van. If you notice down here too, there is an exhaust pipe sticking out. And what that's for is it's a diesel heater. So it draws diesel from the van's fuel tank and it mounts underneath the passenger chair, and it provides us, let me get it pointing down, right there. It provides us almost unlimited heat from the vehicle's fuel tank. So it can last, upwards of a week and a half without having to worry about refilling anything. Makes it really nice. We're not trying to track down propane like in an RV or any auxiliary tanks mounted on the exterior of the vehicle. Really slick. I went with the El Cheapo Chinese diesel heaters. There's a couple other companies that make them, but I've personally had really good luck with the Chinese ones. There's another company out there that called Webasto. They make gasoline-fired ones. They're like one of the only ones that do, and they're quite expensive, but dang are they nice. So at some point in the next project, we're going to end up using that. And I'll introduce that project after this one. But yeah, so what we've done so far is, let me close this back up. We mounted the Flarespace fiberglass flares on the outside. I decided not to go with a window in this one. Kind of like having one area of the bed where people really can't see into. I have a window on the other side. We have the Owl van racks. And they're an expensive product, but oh man, are they tough. And let's see here, let's walk back around the other side. Here's our extended flare with an awning type window. Again, I like awning windows because when it's raining, you can still have a little ventilation. And then the running board up front there. We also have mounted up our solar panels. So this project is going to be interesting. I'm building this to be pretty much a fully capable off-grid camper. And when I mean fully capable, I mean 4-season, from the coldest to the hottest, and completely self-contained power-wise. So my idea is to use a mini split system and power it completely off solar. So that is going to be something unique to have air conditioning off-grid. So pretty exciting. Let me get you up to the roof and I'll show you how we're making this happen. All right, so Owl Van products. I'm about 275 on the hoof and no problem. So that's pretty cool. So the solar panels up here, holy cow, are there a lot of them. That's 700 watts of solar. And I'll take you out to the edge here. And if you look, we are not overhanging the edge. Let me bring you closer to this. For you Sprinter people out there, this is a dang nice, slick way of doing it. So this piece of aluminum angle here is 1.25 inches by 3.25 inches. The next piece, take you way off the side here, that actually, you see the bolt sticking up, that's 1.25 inches by 1.25 inches. And that forms a really nice clean line to mounting those. The bolts that go in the tracks here, those are elevator bolts. So they're 5/16 elevator bolts, and all I had to do was on a bench grinder grind them down so they'd fit into that track. And then so what I did is I put the track mounted the van rails first, and then I went through and I drilled all of these bolt holes, again 5/16 up in the solar panels all the way down. And then I set the whole assembly on top of the van and then riveted it using stainless rivets all the way down. So really strong and pretty easy to install, looks clean. But one of the nice things is if you look at that gap underneath the van, it sits really low down to the roof. So let me get you up a little bit higher. Yeah. See up there, there is our exhaust fan. So we do not have much room to spare on this. And again, the idea is to create a fully off-grid air-conditioned van, so we need all the solar that we can get. But yeah, let me take you inside and I'll show you that. All right, so inside the van, if you look here at our exhaust fan, we have just 3/4 inch plywood that forms a frame, so that way the screws that come down through the vent fan bite into something that will really hold it well. How this is installed is you cut a 14 by 14 inch opening in your van roof, and you're going to notice on these Sprinters, and most other vans, there's a ton of corrugations all through the roof. And I debated for a long time. There is a spot towards the front, kind of right in the middle of the doorway, where you could mount a fan and have a nice flat mounting spot. Same in the back, one rib forward. So not here, but here. You can cut this rib out and your fan will sit in there nice and flat on that sheet metal. But the issue is with that much solar, we had to really be careful of our space. So we needed our fan to mount where there was an existing rib. And we couldn't cut that out. So I'll link the product down below, but there's a gentleman who makes PVC adapters. So they sit on top of that rib and they kind of fill in that space so you can set your fan nice and flush down. The other option is if you needed to get into a rib, you could be a caveman with a hammer and pound it down flat and paint it, but as you stress that steel, you're going to start cracking the paint, and eventually that will probably start rusting on you even if you paint it up. So just a nice tidbit. I'll link that product down below for you. The solar panels are 175 watt Renogy's, and I chose those because those fit within that spacing of the rails and pretty much gave me the maximum wattage without overhang. But yeah, so we cut one window in here. It's not really a seeing window, it's more of a vent. The idea is we're going to have a shower here, and I want to be able to exhaust any of that hot, humid shower air straight up into the exhaust fan to try to keep that moisture outside of the van. So, and then we also cut in the back windows, and those are just solid non-opening windows. For the subfloor, so this van came with, it's about 3/8 inch thick plywood, a really high quality plywood, subfloor. But I wanted something a little thicker that would have a better screw retention. But what I wanted to avoid was drilling down into the van floor. So what I did is I made the van floor out of 3/4 inch birch and built it into a continuous sheet. So at the edges here, where the sheet joins up, there is biscuit joints glued and then Craig screwed to pull together until that glue dried. And so I was able to form in a completely single solid sheet of plywood. And then we went back through where the existing bolt holes were from the subfloor down, and we reused those. So a lot of measurement, but we were able to line it up really well. So all of our bolts that attach the subfloor down are using the factory welded threads below it. And the subfloor is insulated. There's 1/2 inch polyiso foil face below it. And then we used wooden pucks that are planed to the exact thickness we needed to create a little bit of an airspace. So radiant barriers or reflective foil works best when you can leave it an air gap. We taped all the seams with aluminum tape, to try to help prevent moisture from going down through that floor. And then we set the plywood on top of it. So I have a couple pictures of that I'll show you. But anyways, today what we're going to do is we're going to start adding our furring strips in. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to attach that 3/4 inch plywood right to the van wall. And in order to do that, we're going to use a riv nut. And what a riv nut is, it's a little insert that is threaded. This one happens to be 1/4 by 20. And when you crush it down, the collar kind of pops out and it pinches that sheet metal and creates a fairly strong attachment joint. And I'll use a tool like this to do it. All you do is you thread that insert on the mandrel right there, and as you squeeze it down, you'll see as it collapses and it creates a spot where it can pinch that sheet metal. So right there. And it's a fairly strong attachment point. So what we got to do first before we do this is we got to go through all these holes that I've marked, and we got to drill them out so that we can get an insert in there. Now, one of the things I hate about drilling into a van is you get metal shavings everywhere, and metal shavings will eventually start to rust. So what I use is this little thing. It's actually a pacemaker magnet. My dad works with them, so he gave one to me. And that way I can take it, put it right over the hole, I can drill through it, and it'll catch the majority of those metal shavings. And I'll also take a little bit of masking tape on the backside, so as I stick it on there, I'm not scratching or grinding those metal shavings into it. You try to keep it as clean as possible. Once we have all these drilled out, I'll go through with a little bit of paint, and we'll just hit them real quick, and then we'll go through it and put all of our rivnuts in. Then the last step for the furring strips will be actually mounting the furring strips. And I'll show you a neat trick once we have all the rivnuts in here on how to find where those locations are so you can get your board mounted perfectly along there. So I'm going to start drilling, get my headphones in, and get to work. All right, so we got all the holes painted, and it's still a little tacky, which I like. That way, when as that rivnut expands, it doesn't crack the paint. It more just kind of squishes it in between where we want it to bite at. So I'm going to set you right there so you get a first-person perspective on how it flares out. So you just thread one on to the mandrel. Put it in, you'll see it expand. A couple turns just so you can get the maximum bite. You can thread it back out. Easy peasy if I didn't have to do like 100 of them. Hey guys, so we are making good progress. We have all the rivnuts in, and we're mounting up the furring strips. I have the driver's side done. Working on the passenger, but as promised, I'm going to show you how I figure out exactly where these bolt holes are when I'm blindly sticking a piece of wood over it. So I'll show you the neat little trick that I use down here. So what I do is, this is an old 1/4x20 bolt that I just cut the head off, and what I do is I thread that stud into that rivnut. I line up the board exactly where I want it to go. And once I figure that out, all I do is I give it a smack. And that'll leave me a nice indentation that I drill my 1/4-inch hole through, and it bolts right on there. All right, so I got the hole in, and what we do is we thread a bolt through there, and I usually pick the middle of the board. Then I'll take my stud, advance it to one of the far ends, thread it in, line it up, give it a couple smacks. Again, I have another indentation right there, and I'll just proceed to do that the entire length down that board until I have them all marked out. All right, so now that we have all the holes marked out, we're gonna permanently install the bolts. And what we're using is a socket cap screw. You can see the head here kind of tapers out like that. And then we will put a couple drops of thread locker on that bolt, which will ensure that it will never work its way free. And then I torque them down to the point where that head recesses in and is flush with that board, like so. So I'm gonna continue getting all of these done, and I'll make another video to continue the next steps. But this is Joel with North Country Vans, and thanks for watching. Bye.